All right, welcome, Lisa, to Feature Friday for Phoenix Awakening, and we're talking about the pleasures of writing. So, well, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So, what would you like to know?
Yeah, you mentioned about writing as something that's playful and joyful instead of a drudgery that you have to force yourself to do every day, which is the paradigm that a lot of writers fall into sometimes. So how do we shift that into becoming more playful and joyful?
Yeah, cool. Great question. So, like for me, writing is a space of being, okay? Like it's literally this energy where when I write, I get to be more of who I am. And it doesn't really matter what I'm writing about, although maybe I'd probably draw the line at maybe a shopping list or something, that's not that interesting. But whenever you're expressing yourself in any way, whether it be in fiction or whether it be just writing what's going on in your world or whatever it might be, if you look at it as this is a space of you being you and you expressing you in the world, then because what most people do is they write for an outcome. I write to express myself. And I don't have a point of view about what that looks like, right? So in the expression of myself, the outcomes generally get met. And then I might go back and edit it and make it shorter or whatever it might be. But literally for me, it's this thing of, if I do it for the pleasure of it first, for the expression of me first, for the expression of the idea first, then secondly, I do it for the actual thing of, yes, you need copy for, a web page, or you need, to write a sales page or an email or whatever it is that you need to write. But I do it for that expression of the story, the expression of the energy, the expression of the joy that's actually available. And when I start that way, it creates a totally different possibility than if I start with, oh my gosh, I have to write a sales page. What am I going to say? Which is how most people start. Or, oh my gosh, I have to finish this chapter in my book, or my editor's going to be cranky. It's kind of like, that's not writing for the pleasure. That's writing for doing, writing for the have to, the should do, the must do, the necessity of writing. Whereas what I like to look at is, well, how could I make this really fun for me? What could I write about right now that would actually be really enjoyable and playful and pleasurable?
Yeah,
So
totally.
that first thing is the question.
hmm So how do you turn writing into a game that you're playing instead of an outcome thing?
Through asking the questions, actually. So literally that first question of, well, how do I actually, what can I write about today that's going to be fun for me? So literally by turning it into a game, and also by, when I'm out and about, like, you get inspiration from all kinds of different things, right? And so for me, one of the things that I do is when I'm out and about, I look for interesting words. I look for things that will spark something to write about, so that when I actually go to write, it's not a blank page. And it's interesting, like yesterday, I realized that I've got 3 days to put together a talk that I said I'd do months ago. And I was like, oh, that's on in 3 days. And literally it was this thing of, okay, so what's the topic? And then I was looking at, and this actually one I need to do PowerPoint for, which I never normally do, right? And it's like the Pecha method, which is 20 slides, 20 seconds a slide. So I actually have to write the things because I can't time myself for 20 seconds with an on-off switch. And what was really interesting was, as soon as I started to put words down, now one thing for me that I use is Post-it notes a lot, because you can move them around basically. So I literally will put all the different ideas on Post-it notes, and then I start to rearrange them into something that's actually going to be coherent and make sense. So, and then usually I put 2 or 3 words down about something, and then I expand it out into something bigger. And it's the energy you actually write with, and for most people, if they get it in their head that it's a task and a chore, that's the energy that's going to come through in their writing. But if you actually go to it with the space of, oh, I wonder what I can discover, because for me, every time I write, I discover something new, basically.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's a process of discovery, and it's an adventure.
Yeah, yeah. It's like some people do storyboarding where they put a lot of different plot points on similar to post-it notes, and And then the story can come together in many different ways. It doesn't have to have a set, one fixed plot.
Yeah. And I think also to add to that, one of the things that I do, it's a bit of background noise there actually. I don't know what that is. Yeah, one of the things that I tend to do is I don't start at the beginning. I tend to start somewhere in the middle. I don't actually look for what the linear logical way of writing it is. I go, okay, where can I start that would be fun? And I write that piece. Then I go, well, where from here? Like, which branch can I play with next? And so that thing of like allowing the story to come through in its own way, whether it be fiction or non-fiction, it's this thing of allowing it to build itself rather than trying to get it in order before you start. Because a lot of people go, well, I can't write because I can't plan it all out before I start. And my idea is, well, no, you start wherever you can start and you see where the plan goes. And you're going to end, if you do it that way, you'll end up somewhere greater than if you actually started doing it in a really linear logical way. Because if you do it in a linear logical way, you're going to end up where you think you're going.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me turn off my phone. It keeps beeping. So please put it on silent. Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of a book called Write Your Novel from the Middle, where they were suggesting to write it from the middle instead of the beginning or the end.
Yeah, and it's, it works really well. Like, I never write anything from the start. Like, to actually write the first words, there's so much pressure to write the first words, so I always write something a bit further along, even if it's only 2 paragraphs in, and then I go to what the first words can be after that. Yeah, so writing can be this really playful thing, like the other thing I do to change it up a lot is I write in all sorts of different spaces. So sometimes I'll literally sit in the pool, like when it's been really hot here. So I will sit in the pool and put my notepad on the edge of the pool. And that's just a really fun way, because you want to engage your body in your writing. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to type or I'm going to use my hands and that's it. I tend to engage my whole body. So I will move around the house. I will go to different cafes to really tap into different energies. And this is the thing. It's like when you change your surroundings, there's all these different energies that are available in different places. Sometimes I'll go sit on the beach and write. And so it's like if you play with your writing and if you allow it to lead you, like I actually say, okay, I ask my body, well, where would you like to write today? And it will tell me really clearly. We're out in nature. And I do that as well, because it's like, what if there was no rules about how you write? Because people are so big on setting a routine and setting rules, and I'm pretty much the complete opposite. I'm like, what if there's no rules, and what would actually be really fun for me today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Sometimes what I do is I help someone to that idea. I ask whether the article or the story or the novel, the thing that wants to be written, like what does it want to say? If it was a living being, what does it want to express through me? And then allow that to flow.
Yeah. And, it is a living being, actually, in its own way.
Yeah.
Like I look at that every piece of writing I do is its own energy, its own entity. And so you can talk to it just like it's a person, and it will answer you back in its own way. It might not be straight out in English or whatever, but it will actually answer you, and it will give you a sense of what's possible that maybe you haven't thought of yet. So it's actually a really fun thing when you treat it as an energy that's got its own perspectives and own points of view and own possibilities.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said it's not always in English. Sometimes it's in visions and symbology and even in the feeling, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it can be all sorts of things, I mean, it can be a whisper of a conversation as you walk past someone. It can be really all sorts of things. And this is where you need to be really open to receiving. So for me, I virtually almost never get writer's block. Like it would, even yesterday when I'm like, oh, that talk I need to do, I was like, for about 5 minutes, I was like, what am I going to say in that talk? Because like I came up with the topic months ago, you know, and I was in a particular energy back then that I've clearly moved on from now. And it was really interesting because as soon as I sat down and said, okay, so what would you like to be? It started to give me bits of information. And so it's really like this thing of, if you actually are willing to receive from everything, even if it's inanimate, even if it's, you know, a stone on the road, basically, then you will never be stuck for words. Because literally you can expand your energy right out and then allow it to tap into all of the different possibilities that are out there, and then allow the information to come to you as to what's actually possible for writing this particular thing that you're writing. You know, and sometimes for me, I just start with an energy. Like I start with, okay, do I want this to be playful? Do I want it to be transformative? Do I want it to be curiosity provoking? Like, what is it that I would like this thing to be? And that energy often gives me then a starting place as well.
Yeah, and then you can always edit it later. And I think one of the things that causes writer's block is this idea that it has to be perfect the first time. I think the first time is just to have everything come onto the page, and then we can edit it later and create the second and third draft.
Yeah. You know, and it's interesting because there's a book that I've written that it's about 70,000 words, and I've never put it out in the world, this particular one. And I'm looking at it at the moment, and I know that I'm going to throw out 80% of it and then focus on a few things that came out of it, and a few things that have come out of since I wrote it, actually, that actually are oh, that's the book I was trying to write that I didn't know I was trying to write. So never be afraid to throw out your words. Like, I'm literally like, I've got no point of view that I'm going to throw out all those words. It doesn't matter to me, because the thing was, by getting started, by writing those first 70,000 words, I got to a space where I could actually see exactly what I wanted that book to be. So never be afraid to throw words out. I mean, it's okay. It doesn't matter. And like, people go, oh my God, I wasted all that time. What if you didn't? What if you had to actually go through all of that stuff to get to where you are now? And that's, for me, part of the pleasure of it. It's like, I don't ever look at any of it as a waste of time. It's always just like, if I'm having pleasure in the moment as I'm writing, it can never be wasted. You know, you're basically happiness producing in the moment, rather than, oh my God, I've got to struggle and stress my way through writing this book, or whatever it might be.
And that's the advantage of seeing it as random play. Like, there is, you know, we don't see play as a waste of time. It's just something to enjoy. You know, like every day I run around the park just yelling out woohoo, like, woohoo! And that's just play, right? And there's no agenda, there's no destination I'm going to. It's just being in the moment. So writing can be like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not only it can be, it needs to be that. You need to be in the moment. You need to be in that space where literally it's pleasurable for you in the moment. Because if it's not, you want to question, well, do I actually want to write? Or is there another way of expressing this? Because for me, like, you know, yesterday my computer was just having a meltdown. It was obviously just too hot for it. It didn't want to work. And I was like, oh, well, instead of writing and doing things that are writing, I might just do some videos. So for all my Facebook posts yesterday, not all of them, but a lot of my Facebook posts yesterday in different groups, I literally just did little videos on my iPad, and it like live videos on my iPad, and it was really fun. So sometimes you can write from that as well. And this is the thing, I think, for all of us, it's like, it's so easy to think there's only one way to do things. And part of the play for me is like, well, what other way can I do this? It's actually going to work for me today. You know, and that's the curiosity, and that's the adventure of enjoying the writing and actually taking pleasure in it. Because for many of us, we're bored if we do the same thing every day, right? It's really, really boring if you go, oh my God, I've got to write again. I'm going to, you know, bum glue, sit myself down and make myself write. Whereas for me, it's like, well, how much fun can I make it? Where can I write? How can I write? What would make it really enjoyable today in this moment? Because it's different every day.
Yes, I agree. It is different every day.
Because you're different, basically. This is the thing, right? So it is different every day because you're different. But if you were trying to make yourself be the same every day, then there's this kind of contracted crunchiness that comes where you're trying to be someone you were 6 months ago, rather than actually being, okay, this is who I am right now. This is how I can write. Like, I've woken up some days and not known how to write. Like literally, I'm like, okay, I know how to write. You use pen and paper or a computer, and literally it's like blank in my universe. It's like, oh, okay, new reality with writing. And it comes when I change my energy a lot. And what I've noticed is that if I just go, well, how do I write today? What, universe, basically show me, how can I write that I've never written before? And literally by sitting there with the pen, with the paper, and just being present with it, a new possibility comes and a new way of writing comes. So it's like all the tools that I used to use, they don't always work forever, basically. There comes these times when you pretty much take a bit of a quantum leap and you go, okay, I'm just going to rediscover how this works for me right now. And I'm doing this at the moment actually with a business idea that I'm creating. Literally every way I used to create business ideas, it's like, oh no, that's not the way to create this one. So at the moment I'm like, oh wow, well, what's this going to be like? And that's that playful, adventurous thing, because so many people make that wrong. But what if you didn't make it wrong? What if you, oh, what's right about this? And where's the magic in this? And what can I discover that's never been discovered before?
Yeah, exactly. So do you write using pen and paper mostly, or is it with the computer?
Pen's what I'm writing, basically. If I want to write something about something that maybe doesn't really exist very much in the world right now, something that's very new, something that's very different, I will always use pen and paper, because literally you access, when I say a different part of your brain, for me, it's a different part of my awareness comes through when I use my body in that way.
Mm.
I don't know why, that's just how it works. I have heard some people say there is brain science behind it, but for me, it's just, I know when I need to use pen and paper. Computer I use when I want to write fast, when I actually know what I want to write and I'm like, bang, let's go. That's when I tend to use the computer. And any day that writing is not working, I will do it in a different way. And sometimes I'll go and paint, actually, because what I've discovered is that if the writing isn't coming, then if I go and do something creative but totally different, it seems to unlock something. And so I'll go and paint, and that will then allow the writing to show up in the way that it can. And often, I don't have to do the other thing for very long. Sometimes coloring in is another good one. It's just doing something different and then allowing your brain to relax, because we sometimes like overthink it, try too hard, and if you do something that will stop you from trying too hard, then the words will come.
Yeah, totally. Sometimes I just doodle
Yeah, that'll
instead of
work too.
writing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you ever use like record into a tape recorder or a phone recorder and then transcribe it later?
Technically speaking, I do that when I'm driving. I hardly ever transcribe it later. I'm terrible. And in saying that, my first book, so I wrote a book called Stop Waiting, Start Creating. And in that book, the initial probably 60 to 70% of the first draft was done from a series of classes that I did in Europe a couple of years ago. So literally, I took the recordings from all those classes. I didn't transcribe them. I started getting someone to transcribe them. And I realized that I speak in half sentences. And I was like, that's not really going to work. It's going to be a lot of editing. So what I did in the end was I went and listened to the classes again. And I would get the energy of the question the person had asked and what I responded. And then I would pretty much write from scratch and expand on that from scratch. And that actually worked really well for me, because I didn't have to sort of wade through the half sentences. I could go straight to the energy of it and then, write from that place, basically. So that's how I tend to do it more than. And sometimes, like if I'm driving, I will record, 3 sentences of something. And if I remember that it's there, that's awesome. And when I find it a year and a half later, sometimes that's awesome too. It's perfect for that time,
Yeah, yeah. So I guess there are 2 ways to write, to write something that has a clear, idea of what it's about. Like you mentioned about being in a state of inspiration all day long, and then so in that case that the content comes first and then the title comes later, right? But sometimes you have a clear, and I think it's easier to be more playful in that case. But sometimes you have a clear idea of like, you have a clear title, you have a clear topic that you want to talk about, and then you have to come up with the content, right?
Yeah.
So how do you stay in a state of inspiration when it's in that case?
I pretty much ask for everything in the universe to contribute to me.
Mm.
So if I've got like, a topic or a title, I'm like, okay, so what do I know about this? I will ask questions. I will get, first of all, it's what do I know about this? Second of all, it's like, okay, what else can I know about it that I think I don't know? Thirdly, it's probably a thing of, okay, so what other information are people seeking about this topic? So when I ask these questions, I'm not necessarily looking for a very specific answer. I'm more asking the question to open up the energy. I mean, I have quite a capacity to tap into people's worlds and see what they actually desire and require. So I will look at the topic and go, okay, so what do people need to know about this? And generally, there'll just be something and I'll just start writing. What I have learned is to trust that whatever comes is the thing. And I do this a lot with my email newsletter, my love notes that I send out to Creativity Lab people, because like literally I'll have a whisper of an idea and I'll go, okay, so what do I know about this and what would people like to know? And I'll write it and people will write back to me going, oh my gosh, it was exactly the thing I needed to hear today. So it's literally this thing of trusting yourself that you do know something more about it and then starting where you can start. And, you know, sometimes I've written the craziest things and I've sent it anyway going, wow, that's pretty interesting. I'm not too sure about that, but I'm going to send it anyway. And often they're the ones people go, oh, that really was exactly what I needed. So I've learned to trust that over time. And I just play with it. I still play with it in a very similar way to what I've described before.
Those are great questions. It's similar to it really puts you in a state of possibility, similar to the questions in Access Consciousness, which you're trained in also.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you know, I'd learned a lot about questions from Access, and it really does make a huge difference because basically questions open up choices and possibilities if you don't decide what the answer is before you ask the question. You know, and a lot of people are like, oh, I've got the answer. So they're kind of going through the motions of asking. Whereas when I ask the question, I'm like, well, what's possible? What is there? I don't know. It's like you do know somehow, or you wouldn't even be curious about that topic. But it's like tapping into it in a way. And for me, I always have this little saying of information comes to me. Because literally whenever I ask for information about something, information comes to me in the weirdest possible ways. Like I've never failed to be surprised about how the information shows up. Often in a client session, for example, I will say, I'll find out something more about that for you. And I'll go back home or go back to my computer and literally there will be an email about that topic. And this happens to me a lot, you know. When I say this happens to me, I get that I create it in some weird, you know, way. But it's like I'm willing to be tapped into all of the different possibilities and choices and molecules in the universe so that that information can be available. And it's another way of playing, actually, for me. It's like, well, what can I tap into that would allow me to know exactly what I'm wanting to talk about and exactly what people are needing to hear right now?
Yeah. And I think this has applications even in building a business in general. Like, how would you apply everything we've talked about in your business?
Yeah, well, it applies totally. I mean, literally, it's just same things, you know. How do you bring the play into it? How do you actually, what questions can you ask that will expand it? You know, I work a lot with energy in my business. Like I will put the energy into things first. And it's the same when you write. So when I write, because it's a space of being for me, there's an energy in there. And so when people read it, they're not only getting the words, they're actually getting all of the energy that I wrote with. And, you know, and same when I paint. It's really the same when I create anything. Same when I create things for my business. And it's literally like if you're willing to put the energy of you into things, because you are unique, like we're all unique, you know, in our own different ways. And what you and someone else can talk about a topic and you will have maybe even very similar words, but totally different energies behind it. Different people will resonate with that. And so for me, all of this applies just as much in business as it does for writing. And it's literally just playing with it and exploring it and seeing how it works for you. Because it works different for each of us. You know, I've had a lot of people say, well, tell me your creative process. And I'm like, well, why do you want to know? And it's funny because they're like, well, so I can do that. I'm like, well, it won't work the same for you. You know, oh, you have a creative process and you need to go on the adventure of discovering it. And this is a lot about, you know, the pleasure of writing, the pleasure of painting, the pleasure of anything, is when you go on that creative adventure to actually discover, well, what your creative process is. And for me, mine is always moving and shifting. It's not always the same thing, as I talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually are willing to acknowledge, oh, I have a creative process, and if I just play with it and it will keep showing me more and more, then you can create anything.
Yeah.
Literally anything. You don't actually need to go, oh, I'm only a writer, or I'm only this, or I'm only that. You just play with it in different ways, in different, like, to me, business is creation. You know, it's all about creating.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you're a polymath or a like polymath or
Oh,
like a
yeah. Yes.
multi-potentialite. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. I call it multi-creative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely am. I'd be so bored if I wasn't. I used to try and just do one thing, and it was always like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, you know?
And it sounds like you have multiple businesses. Like, what are some of the things you
Yeah,
do?
well, it's funny. I'm always, you know, it's always shifting and changing. I have a lot, like I have Creativity Lab, which is my main business, and it has lots of different things underneath it. And actually I moved everything underneath it last year, because I used to have a separate coaching business. And in the end, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put it all together. And the funny thing is, I'm right now in the midst of creating another business with a friend, and we've got some really cool, crazy ideas for what we're going to do. I can't tell you about it yet because it's not launch ready just
Uh-huh.
yet. But it's a really fun thing, and I'm really excited to be doing it, because it's like it will build on all of this stuff, but in a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
That's awesome. And then it sounds like you are also like launching a writing course, or like what is your connection to writing and business?
fun. Yeah, I love to have more than one business.
Yeah.
So you just broke up a little there. What was that one?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you broke up too. Oh, there you're back. Yeah, I was saying it sounds like you are also launching a writing course. Is that what?
Oh, I do have. Okay, I already have a writing course. So I
Okay.
have a course called Write in Your Voice, which is, I actually ran it live as a 30-day program a couple of years ago. And it's really fun. It's all about learning to write in your voice, you know, and it's got lots of really fun things in it to actually bring that playfulness and that joy and that ease into writing, whether you're a writer or whether you'd like to be a writer or whether you just really know you need to write some stuff even if you don't want to be a writer, you know. So it works for everyone at whatever level they are, because you just apply it to where you are right now.
Uh-huh.
And so that's available. I'm wondering what the link for that is. If you go to creativitylab.tv, you'll be able to find it in the courses section. I think /courses, actually. You'll be able to find it in there. Yeah, because I'm thinking, I'm not sure where that is. It's somewhere on the website. Yeah. So I do have that. I just wanted to do these interviews with people because I thought it would be really fun to talk about writing from a different space, because so many people make it into this sort of hard work and suffering and the misery of writing. And I'm like, no, writing is fun and beautiful and expansive and creative, and it's all sorts of different things. So I just wanted to sort of have people have more of the pleasure and the joy of writing than the misery of writing. That's what started me on the call. Hey, I'd like to do some interviews. Who wants to play with me?
Yeah. So when you are writing and you're just sitting down, like what is the thing going through you? You said you come from a place of being. So do you have a visualization that you do, or do you dance, or like what is it that you do when you have the?
I just sit there and write. I literally just sit there and write, because for me it's so much a part of who I am.
Okay.
I can do those other things, like sometimes, very occasionally there's no words there, very occasionally, and so I will go and do something creative. But for me, usually if I go for a walk in nature, if I go to the beach, if we've got lots of really cool little funky shops all around where I live. If I go and look at, and there's a really good regional art gallery here. So any of those things, I'll go and basically for me, it's about receiving. So whatever I do, it's about what energies can I receive that I wasn't willing to receive when I started to write and had no words,
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, it's not really about thinking. Writing is not about thinking for me at all. It's about receiving the energies, receiving the awareness, receiving the possibilities, and allowing those to show up in whatever words they can. And, like with Write in Your Voice too, one of the things I talk about in there is like matching the words to the energy. Because like for me, that's a very natural thing as well. I didn't actually know that I did it. And then someone pointed it out to me. I'm like, oh, doesn't everyone do that? And they're like, no, not really. I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe this is part of why writing is a natural thing to me, but it also is something that you can learn because I've taught people to do it. So for me, it's this energy really of a joy in being aware of an energy, being aware of a possibility, being aware of something in the world that needs expression, and then putting the words to it that match most closely. And I just do that for fun. Like, that's a pleasure for me, you know?
Yeah.
I was a mad Scrabble player when I was a kid. So.
Yeah. So you just put pen to paper and start writing.
Yeah.
And you do it for fun in the same way that some people dance.
Yeah.
Or you do it for pleasure in the same way that some people like get a massage, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And like for me, if I'm cranky, I'll write. And even if I write, I'm cranky, what it does is at some point you'll make yourself laugh and then you're not cranky anymore. So for me, it's I actually use it to change the space I'm in as well.
Yeah.
You know, like I've got no point of view that everything I write should be, you know, a Hemingway novel or whatever. Like I'm just like, I write for the pleasure of putting the words on the page. And, you know, years later I find those words and they're either useful or they're not, and I throw them out. So it's like this thing of just playing with it and enjoying it and not making it really significant. I don't make it significant.
Yeah. It sounds like similar to a practice that I do sometimes called contemplative movement or inspired movements, where I just move around and then I just let go and allow my body to move the way it wants to be moved. Or sometimes I would just stare at my hands and just wait, and eventually the hands will just move on their own. And so it's and then that can be applied to anything, including writing. Sounds like that's how you write. You just, you know, let your body move the way it wants to be moved.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I pretty much let the words tumble out.
Yeah.
And they are what they are. And then I'll edit them later if need be, you know. But I don't, see, I think for a lot of people, they try and write from their head. I don't write from my head. I literally write from space. Like,
And when you're writing, you are the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for most people, if you aren't naturally a lot of space, the thing you want to do before you write is to do something physical with your body that will allow you to be more space.
Yeah. And space is 90% of what's there anyway. It's just 90% of us.
Just tapping into that. Absolutely. Yeah. Just tapping into that in really fun ways.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for this interview.
Yeah, thanks, Kundan. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Alrighty, so I'll post it in YouTube and post it in their group tomorrow.
Cool.
Yeah, awesome. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks a lot.
All right, bye.
See you later. Bye.